I remember the exact moment everything felt off. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a small pause in a conversation, barely noticeable. But in that silence, I suddenly had this strange feeling, like I wasn't really seeing people clearly anymore. And the more I paid attention, the more unsettling it became. Before we begin, please support MindShift Stories by subscribing, liking the video, and leaving a comment. Your support helps us continue sharing meaningful stories with the world. Most of my days used to follow a predictable rhythm. Wake up, check my phone, rush through coffee, and head to work. I worked in a small office, nothing fancy. Same desks, same people, same conversations about deadlines, weekend plans, and traffic. I thought I understood people. I believed I could read them. If someone smiled, they were happy. If they were quiet, something was wrong. If they were confident, they knew what they were doing. At least, that's what I told myself. I remember thinking, people are pretty straightforward if you just pay attention. That belief made life feel simpler, manageable, until it didn't. It started with something small. One of my coworkers, Jason, always seemed confident. He spoke clearly, laughed easily, and never hesitated in meetings. People naturally listened to him. I used to admire that. But one afternoon, during a team discussion, I noticed something I hadn't before. He made a suggestion, and everyone nodded, including me. But later, when I thought about it, the idea didn't actually make much sense. It wasn't terrible, just weak. Still, nobody questioned it. Not even me. That bothered me more than it should have. I remember sitting at my desk thinking, why did I agree with that? I didn't have an answer. A few days later, I stumbled across something online about the halo effect. The idea was simple. When someone has one positive trait, like confidence or attractiveness, we automatically assume they have other positive qualities too, without realizing it. And suddenly, Jason made sense. It wasn't that his ideas were always good, it was that I believed they were because of how he presented himself. That realization stayed with me, not because it was shocking, but because it felt uncomfortably true. After that, I started noticing things more carefully. Not judging, just observing. That's when the second shift happened. There was a woman in our office, Maria, who was usually quiet. She didn't speak much in meetings, kept to herself. Most people assumed she wasn't very confident, or maybe just not that engaged. I thought the same thing, until one day, Jason was out, and Maria had to present. Something changed. She spoke clearly, explained things better than anyone else had. Her ideas were structured, thoughtful, precise. Everyone was listening, including me. I remember thinking, wait, where was this before? Later, I realized something else. It wasn't that Maria lacked confidence, it was that we had already decided who she was. That's when I came across another idea, confirmation bias. We tend to notice and remember things that confirm what we already believe, and ignore what doesn't. We had labeled Maria as quiet and less confident, so we never really paid attention when she showed otherwise, including me. That hit harder than the first realization, because it meant I wasn't just misunderstanding people, I was actively filtering them. That thought stayed with me longer than I expected. It started affecting how I saw everything. Conversations, reactions, even my own decisions. And then something even stranger happened. One evening, I was walking home, replaying a conversation I had earlier that day. A friend had told me something that didn't quite sit right with me. It wasn't wrong, just slightly off. But instead of questioning it, I found myself adjusting my own thinking to match it, almost automatically. That bothered me. I remember stopping mid-walk and thinking, why am I doing this? Later that night, I came across something called cognitive dissonance. It's the discomfort we feel when we hold two conflicting beliefs, and how we subconsciously try to resolve that discomfort, not by finding truth, but by making things feel consistent, even if it means changing our own perspective. That realization felt different, quieter, deeper, because it wasn't about other people anymore. It was about me. After that, I started questioning more things, not aggressively, just gently. Why did I agree with certain opinions so easily? Why did I assume someone's intentions without asking? Why did some people's words affect me more than others? And slowly, another pattern started to emerge. There was a day when my manager gave me feedback. Nothing harsh, just a small comment about improving communication. But I kept thinking about it all day. Meanwhile, he had also mentioned two positive things, and I barely remembered those. That night, I realized I had completely fixated on the negative part. That's when I discovered the negativity bias. Our brains naturally focus more on negative experiences than positive ones, not because we want to, but because it's how we're wired, for survival. That explained a lot. Why one small criticism could outweigh 10 compliments. Why awkward moments stayed longer than good ones. Why I sometimes felt worse than I actually was. It wasn't reality, it was perception. At this point, I thought I had a decent understanding of what was happening, but I was wrong, because the next realization was the one that changed everything. I was having coffee with a friend, and we were talking about relationships. He described someone as selfish, and without thinking, I agreed. But later, when I replayed the conversation, I realized something uncomfortable. I didn't actually know that person well enough to make that judgment. I had just accepted the label. That's when I came across the fundamental attribution error. We tend to attribute other people's behavior to their personality, while attributing our own behavior to circumstances. If someone is late, we think they're irresponsible. If we're late, it's because traffic was bad. That shift in perspective felt humbling, because it meant I had been unfair without realizing it, more often than I'd like to admit. And then came something even more subtle. I started noticing how my expectations affected outcomes. There was a new intern at work, quiet, unsure, hesitant. At first, I assumed he wouldn't perform well, so I didn't engage much, didn't offer much help. Over time, he stayed distant, uncertain. And one day, it clicked. It wasn't just him, it was me too. That's when I learned about the self-fulfilling prophecy. Our expectations about people can influence how we treat them, which then shapes how they behave. I expected him to struggle, so I acted in a way that made that more likely. That realization stayed with me longer than any of the others, because it showed me something simple but powerful. Sometimes we don't just observe reality, we help create it. By this point, everything felt different. Not confusing, just quieter, more layered. I started noticing pauses in conversations, subtle shifts in tone, the gap between what people say and what they mean. But more importantly, I started noticing my own thoughts, the assumptions I made without realizing, the patterns I followed automatically, the stories I told myself about other people. And then one final realization brought everything together. I was sitting alone one evening thinking about all of this, all these theories, all these patterns, and I asked myself something simple. If all of this is happening, how much of what I believe is actually real? Not fake, just filtered. That's when it clicked. None of these psychological theories were about fixing people. They were about understanding how limited our perception really is. We don't see people as they are. We see them through layers of assumptions, biases, expectations, and past experiences. And the same is true for how others see us. That thought wasn't depressing. It was freeing, because it meant misunderstandings aren't always intentional, judgments aren't always accurate, and people aren't always who we assume they are. Since then, I haven't tried to read people the same way. I don't rush to label behavior. I don't assume I fully understand someone after one interaction. And I definitely don't trust every first impression. Not because people are complicated, but because perception is. Now, when someone seems distant, I pause. When someone seems confident, I look a little deeper. When I feel certain about something, I question it just a little. Not to doubt everything, but to stay aware. Because the truth is, most of what we believe about people isn't based on what we see. It's based on how we interpret what we see. And that difference, it changes everything.
So now I pay attention to that small pause in conversations, the one I used to ignore. Because sometimes that's where the real understanding begins.